I think you're absolutely right that we're expecting a combination of historical continuity in that many aspects of the coronation are a repeat of 1953, but also some changes to reflect that the UK is now a very different country to what it was in 1953. Much more diverse, with different faiths being practiced up and down the UK. And also, the UK is now viewed more as a union of four nations of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And that's going to be reflected in the service as well, with Welsh, Irish, and Scots Gaelic all sort of having a role in the ceremony, in addition to English, of course.
Yes. And of course, you know, King Charles is also head of the Anglican Church. So when you talk about the multi-faith United Kingdom that exists today, will there be representation of those other faiths?
Yes, there's going to be a procession of other faith leaders. And indeed, at the end of the ceremony, they are sort of going to welcome the king at the Great West Door of Westminster Abbey. So other faith leaders will play a key role in some of the ceremonial aspects, very much so.
Yeah. At the same time, of course, there was a man arrested outside Buckingham Palace. There are protests that are being allowed. I imagine there must be a huge security operation.
Yes, there is. And I'm in London at the moment, and I walked past Westminster Abbey earlier, and it's already underway. But, you know, this is not new to London or the Metropolitan Police. You know, that they are experienced in policing these very large-scale events. It also must be said that the route of the procession is much shorter than in 1953, and that does contain the policing and security operation. In 1953, the procession effectively went all around central London, whereas, you know, on Saturday, it's just going to be down the Mall and down Whitehall, for those of you who might be familiar with London. It's a much shorter route and much easier to police.
Yeah. There are many invited Commonwealth heads of state, our Prime Minister among them, who perhaps see a time when the King is not head of state. What do you think King Charles makes of what is quite a modern dilemma for many Commonwealth countries?
I think in principle, he views it as a decision for each Commonwealth realm, whether they choose to continue to have him as head of state or not. That was really the position of Elizabeth II, and indeed was when, you know, Australia held a referendum in 1999. I think the position of the monarchy is that, you know, they're willing to be the head of state as long as, you know, these countries, including Australia, want it to be the head of state. If they choose to move to a republic, then they will assist and support that transition. Indeed, as we saw when the King, then Prince Charles, he visited Barbados and took part in the ceremony where Barbados transitioned from a monarchy to a republic. You know, so these things can be done without rancor or without any disharmony. And if an independent nation chooses to become a republic, that's perfectly fine, I think, in many ways.
Yeah. Do you think he values the Commonwealth as much as his mother did?
I think he does, but clearly his mother had 70 years of activities with the Commonwealth to build upon. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the King does with the Commonwealth and how he supports the Commonwealth. The title head of the Commonwealth is a purely ceremonial title. The King doesn't have any sort of executive authority with the Commonwealth. That's with the Commonwealth Secretariat. But you could see a potential role for the Commonwealth with the environment, because it has members who are large and small, like the UK and Australia, but countries like the Seychelles, which perhaps bear the brunt of climate change. And so you could sort of see a natural constituency there to sort of generate some policies and best practice about the Commonwealth. And that could be something the King is interested in supporting.
You know, Craig, it's interesting because his sister, Princess Anne, says we kind of know what we're getting because King Charles has been around for a while, but do you think people get a sense of who King Charles is going to be, what he sees as important?
I think, yes, that there are two things that I think we're going to see combine in the years and months ahead, which is we know that, he is interested in certain causes, but he has to balance that with the need to be a politically neutral monarch. And so that there's perhaps a little bit of a tension there that we may expect to see him, if we think about him as Prince of Wales, sort of perhaps be a bit more strident, but he won't be able to do that as monarch. And so I think we're going to try and see him square the circle in that way. I think we've already seen him sort of act in a politically neutral way, but perhaps in a slightly sharper way to his mother. For example, he gave a substantial donation to a food bank charity here in London. And, I'm not quite sure that the Queen would have done that, or at least in the same way. But it again, is not a party political thing, but it is a sort of move towards just doing something a bit more active. And I think we might have a more active monarch rather than just a purely ceremonial figure, but trying and remaining outside of party politics. It's a difficult balance, but it's something you can touch and feel in the months and years ahead.
Yeah, we'll watch with interest. Are you going to be glued to the television?
Yes, I think I'm going to be at Buckingham Palace, sort of doing some media, and yes, I'll very much be watching all the activities on Saturday.
I think it'll be quite the event. Great to have you on. Thanks so much.
Very welcome. Happy to join you.